Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest mysteries and disappearances video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another new entry here. This one yet again based on one of your new suggestions. This one having to do with a popular subject that keeps being asked. And in this case, I'm going to showcase something associated with it. It's about the phenomenon known as the missing 411. Now, I've actually talked about it directly couple of years back. So if you go under the search function, type in missing 411, you'll see it there. You'll see my video associated with it again from a few years back. But I found a treat. In this case, it's a subreddit called the missing 411, once again from the reddit.com website. But there it's from a user who claims that they've worked in the national parks and forests for most of their life, and they have an AMA, in other words, an Ask Me Anything about that phenomenon. So I thought I would showcase that person's entry here along with some of the questions and answers associated with it. I thought it was a blast. When I was reading this information, I just knew I had to share it with everyone here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's do that. The title of this person's tale or post is called "I've Lived and Worked in National Parks and Forests for My Entire Life, AMA." So here's what they state. A few weeks ago, I was asked to do an AMA, and my life/job got in the way. Labor Day weekend and the end of the summer probably wasn't the best time to attempt to answer people in a timely manner. Who am I? Because of the nature of my current job, I can't tell you my name. I wouldn't want to anyway. I've seen what the village can do when someone criticizes their hero. Also, by not giving you my name and current job locale, I can speak more openly and honestly about my experiences, thoughts, and feelings. I am a mod here, and I was thoroughly vetted by the creator and another mod in this community when I did the last AMA. I agreed to revisit some of those questions and take new questions from members of the subreddit. History and experience. I was born in a national forest. My grandparents were very early conservationists and rangers at several parks and forests over the course of their lives. My uncles were smoke jumpers and park rangers, and my aunt was one of the first women on the Coast Guard's SAR program. I'm third generation, as are two of my cousins. I have a bachelor's with a double major in biology and history and a minor in health science. I have an MPA in emergency management and was a qualified flight medic. I've had many job titles in my career, approaching 35 years now. I've worked with NPS, UFCS, and my local search and rescue. As I've gotten older and my kids have grown, I changed my career slightly in the last 3 years. I now work with OES, the Office of Emergency Services, and Region 5 to coordinate responses, operations, and teach. The last time I counted, I had participated in over 600 searches. I'm proud to say that I've been on teams that have in total, across the years, found 489 of those people. I volunteer my services to families who are still trying to find their loved ones long after the investigatory agency has stopped looking. I believe doing this work matters. So with all that being said, ask me anything. I will start answering questions as soon as I eat lunch tomorrow. We try to keep this subreddit dedicated to M411 stuff. So while you can ask anything and I will answer anything within reason, I'd like to ask that people maintain a respectful dialogue, mainly in case the families of the lost might stumble across this thread someday. Thanks. And so that's their entry and what they stated. And then here are the questions and answers, some of the ones that I found the most interesting. So let's go ahead and let's share that here. Question: what is the strangest experience you have had in the national park? Here's what they said. I'll preface this by saying that strange doesn't always mean paranormal, but most of the strangest things I've experienced are people doing weird blank crap where they shouldn't be doing weird blank crap. Ever walk into a clearing to see a man taking a full mud bath using bear scat as soap to cleanse his inner soul? Because I have. I've also experienced a completely silent forest, dead silent. It was pretty awe-inspiring and gave me cold prickles, but after a few seconds, the sounds returned and all was well. I get why people think that stuff is creepy. It is a little creepy, but most colleagues, hikers, campers, hunters, or outdoorsy people have described similar things, so by definition, it's not unusual. Next question. Do you think that there's any supernatural disappearances in the U.S. park system, or are they all misadventures? And then they said, no, I don't think there are supernatural disappearances. I also wouldn't categorize them as all misadventures. People are just people, and as such can be fragile and fall victim to a host of elements. If we don't know the cause of death or disappearance, then we can't default to supernatural to explain it. Sometimes we have to wait for evidence to play out or wait for the answer to reveal itself. Next question. How has cell phones changed search and rescue efforts? Here's what they said. 100%. Compared to 20 years ago, 1,000%. For one, just from a logistics perspective, it's a game changer for rallying your SAR partners. It used to be, and still is for some locales, a pager-based or radio-based phone tree alert system. That changed in the 80s and 90s to mostly pager-based. As text capability became universal, the ability to alert your volunteers and tell them the information became far easier, and therefore the response times shrank. Those minutes were important minutes. On the victim's end, this meant most calls for help never even make it to the activation of the entire SAR teams. If people can't use their phones to call 911, they can almost always get a text out. It may be different in other states, provinces, and countries, but in our region, if a 911 call is placed, your call is transmitted to your courier's nearest cell phone tower. The tower signal to the 911 center then provides either phase 1 or phase 2 location data. The data is then used to send help. PLBs and in-reach garment tech has been an even bigger game changer. Next question. David talks about a decentralized network of reporting cases. He infers this is on purpose. Is there no network system for crime reporting? And then they said there is a centralized network for reporting cases, and it's been active in use for a long time. I'm not sure why Paulides acts like it doesn't exist. As for crime reporting, that's sort of a broad generalization, and I'm not sure what you mean. Anyone can report a crime, and that report is usually handled by the agency that holds jurisdiction. I think what DP, in other words, David Paulides fails to recognize or share is that going missing is not a crime. Adults are allowed to ditch their phones and hike into the wilderness, and it happens a lot more than you think. It's not a crime to go for a walkabout. Next question. David says federal agencies like the FBI are called in on cases. He believes this to be suspect. Have you seen these agencies, and why were they on site? And then he answers, it's kind of funny because DP acts like the FBI showing up is evidence of a conspiracy. In actuality, there are certain circumstances where the FBI will absolutely take charge or be invited in and be handed the case, usually when local law enforcement doesn't have the resources to perform the necessary investigation. If a child is involved or their state lines or anything hinky, it's proper. In all my years on the job, I can't think of a single agency that I didn't tap for resource or help if they offered, and I never hesitated to reach out to get help. Next question. I have read a lot about feral people living in the national forest. Is this true? And could the missing have stumbled upon them? David suggests it could be serial killers. I always thought it could have been people running into illicit drug grows that people walked into. And then he mentions feral people are extraordinarily rare in the truest sense of the word. I think there's only been a handful of truly feral humans, like born in the forest, raised without human interaction. By the numbers, I would argue you have a greater chance of running into quasi-feral children, humans who have been isolated by parents, religion, or other humans due to abuse, but that doesn't get to the meat of your question. There are people who live on public land. These are people who go into the woods and go stealth mode. These are mountain men and women who thrive in the backcountry and only come out once in a while. Occasionally you come across them. They generally choose that lifestyle very consciously and want to be left alone. They're usually content to live and let live. I would argue that they're less likely to be serial killers or sadistic sociopaths than any sample of 100 city dwellers. Why? Because if your whole goal is to avoid people and live off the land, your opportunities for serial violent crimes and against other humans goes way down. Next question is, the clothes coming off sounds 100% hypothermia. And then they answer, clothing coming off can be a lot of different things. Hypothermia, hyperthermia, taking a swim, thinking they'll keep your clothes dry by taking them off so you can put them on later on and be dry and warm. It's out of fear, it's out of leaving a trail. There's literally so many possibilities. Kids will also take off anything that starts to run a blister or get uncomfortable. Whenever people get all supernatural because the kids' clothes were found, I always want to challenge them to take a walk to their local playground or school and see how many unclaimed items of clothing are left behind. It's unreal. Having raised a respectively moderate number of kids, I can't even tell you how many pairs of shoes were parted from their mates in different states without my knowledge, consent, or awareness. Next question. Have you been involved in searches? If yes, what was different about missing people searches like weather and location versus normal days or cases that David speaks about? And then they answer yes, many. What makes me chuckle when David brings up normal versus abnormal weather is that he clearly doesn't understand topography or geography or human behavior. Most day hikers, who are usually the least prepared for extended stays in the wilderness, start their hike when it's light outside and then get into trouble in the afternoon. Well, any place where you have any topography, guess what? When thunderstorms or afternoon showers start, guess when they start? In the afternoon. It's just thermal physics. Weather is constantly changing, and that's not abnormal. I'm not sure why David acts like it's a profile point. Next question. Is it possible we're dealing with wild animal attacks, people falling in caverns, or Bigfoot? And then they answer animal attacks? Yes, always possible. Not super common, but not so rare as to be off the table. Really depends on the biome and the number of factors. Do I believe in Bigfoot? No. Do I believe there are organisms and species we haven't seen or cataloged? Absolutely. But in my opinion and in demonstrable data, these organisms tend to be small and incapable of kidnapping. In the American West, especially in deserts, falling into tunnels and shafts or exploring them and getting lost and stuck is highly probable. In some counties in California and Nevada, there are entire rooms filled with old tunnel and mine maps. There are 2 counties in California that I've had the pleasure of working with at various times. They keep a large map on the wall of someone's office so that everyone is aware of where the potential mine traps are. Next question. Have you seen aliens? And then they said, only on TV, which personally I feel very cheated. I do want to believe. Next question. I hear crime is a much higher factor in national forests than in town. Is that true? And he says, let me think about this one because it really depends on what kind of crime we're talking about. Like personally, don't ever leave anything you want to keep in your car unattended at a trailhead. Criminals love places where there aren't many witnesses or cameras, and you're going to be walking away from your vehicle for hours or days. If your forest borders are cities, like let's use Los Angeles National Forest as an example, you're going to draw thieves and opportunistic criminals from the city. I don't even like leaving my car at trails heads for personal hiking anywhere near Angel's Crest Highway. Boo to that. I will always leave my car at a friend's and ask them to Uber me there, my hiking partner and my gear to the trailhead, and so on. Same goes for tents in national parks. I'm sort of awestruck by people who would set up 4 giant tents with generators and laptops and just leave all of it, only to watch them get in the car and drive off for some exploration of undetermined length. Might as well put up a sign on your tent that says, please steal my valuable. Don't be those people. Then that's it. That's where I stopped it when it came to these fascinating questions. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this whole encounter or post here. Fascinating stuff, right? Here you have a situation, if you believe it, that this is a person that worked in the national parks and forests for their entire career, and they decided to do this AMA. I was most surprised by the almost cautionary, I guess you could even call it negatory aspect that they had towards the missing 411. They were practically dismissing every question that people were asking to see if there was something supernatural, something strange, weird, alien, Bigfoot type stuff happening in the forest. And they're like, no, mainly it's just people being people that do something and they do it either recklessly or they do it just out of habit. But it turns up them either being lost or something like clothes being left behind and so on, and it's not anything having to be out of the ordinary. It's just them acting the way they are, and then people coming across their situation and then immediately thinking, oh no, it's something else associated with aliens or something else associated with Bigfoot and so on. So they almost took that stance pretty much actually for every single question. And in their case, they're trying to explain away things that are more natural, and they give examples associated with it as well. Fascinating, because you would think that there would have been at least something, maybe one slight thing that they had that they could think that it was weird, but no, they didn't. The closest that it came was them talking about the dead silence, how they stated that yes, it has happened. The forest goes completely silent, and they mentioned that it is creepy. But again, they didn't attribute that to anything out of the ordinary, something supernatural or anything along those lines. But it was fascinating for them to explain how cell phones have changed things afterward. And then, of course, with the FBI being involved in certain cases, that it's also natural. It's not part of any kind of conspiracy. It's just agencies working with each other. And it's fascinating to read that they in turn invite these agencies because it's a lot of big help. And a lot of times it's about finding the person, and that's more important than anything else in terms of not accepting help. The feral people thing was pretty fascinating too. I have heard about that as well, that there's people out there that are basically 100% living off the grid. They're there in that public forest area, but way out there, and who knows, maybe occasionally people do find them. And then lastly, the thing involving the attacks from people and criminals, that does happen as well. In fact, I remember reading a story about that, or seeing it. If you ever seen the show Deadliest Catch, one of the guys there, I think his name is Jake, his father went missing in one of these forests that was up there, I think in Alaska. Or was it Alaska? I can't remember which state it was. But I think that's what happened to them. The father was up there just by themselves. They had left their car. They went somewhere just for a walk, and they were by themselves in the middle of nowhere. Perfect opportunity for a criminal to do something to them, and then they would never be found ever again. They never were. In fact, only the car was found and nothing else afterwards. So that's why that the user heavily advised, be very careful on that. If you're going to be in a national forest area, you're going to park your car, you're going to be doing anything essentially that's going to be with just yourself or with valuables and so on. Be very careful, because it is a high likelihood that that's where criminals, especially if you're nearby a city, will be there. He called it opportunistic criminals. But let me know what you guys and gals think as far as this entry, as far as it being related to the missing 401, and about the stance that the user has, or the person that posted it. But I forgot to mention their name. They're by the name of Trail Angel L4. So let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.